Good morning, everyone. This is Chad Klein here with Paladin Data. I'm going to ask that those who it's not your first rodeo, if you could go ahead and press the little hand button so I can make sure that I'm being heard and not talking at my wall here. There we go. Thank you, Nancy. Appreciate that. Tiana, appreciate that as well. Cool. Well, I'm going to give it 2 or 3 more minutes here, let everybody a chance to go fill up their coffee cup here and get themselves together. We got a few more people trickling in as well. So give me a few minutes, probably about 3 or 4, and we're going to go ahead and get this party started. All right, everybody, let's go ahead and get started. Well, as I've already said, my name is Chad Klein with Paladin here. I'm an account manager here, been working for Paladin a little over 4 years. Hope to continue that for quite some time here. And today we're going to be talking about rounding schemes. Don't have a lot here for you because there's simply not too much involved in rounding schemes. It's pretty simple once we kind of wrap our brains around how it works. So a few things that I want to cover today. What is a rounding scheme and when to use it? Pretty simple. Setting up a rounding scheme, how to then apply that rounding scheme to an item, and then to set up a rounding scheme for a whole supplier if sometimes we don't want to go through every item that a supplier offers and apply that rounding scheme, but we would like uniformity across a certain supplier's pricing structure. We can set that up very simply without having to go into 4,000 different items and set a pricing scheme or a rounding scheme to it. Okay, so let's go ahead and just get right started here. Um, what is a rounding scheme and how to use it? So you want to use a rounding scheme if you want all of your prices to conform to a certain pricing structure. So all of your prices ending pretty in 9.5s or 9.9s, 9.7s. There's a lot of different psychology out there and studies as to what people tend to lean to. I personally like things to be consistent, so I like things ending in fives, nines, or sevens. I've heard from other people out there that it's good to have weird wacko numbers. Sevens are a big thing for a lot of people, so you can read into it. There's been a lot of research done as to what prices really get tickles people's fancy, but The rounding scheme will allow you to figure that out, make a decision for yourself, and then kind of stick to it. You can use with EDI updating your pricing. You can also use with reference margins updating your pricing. So any of the sort of automated price updates that are happening, you can then use a rounding scheme as well. They only do not work if you're manually adjusting your prices, because Paladin's always going to respect when you manually adjust a price to, hey, I want to sell something for $1.01. It will absolutely let you do that and not touch it with your rounding scheme that you have applied. Only when you're using automatic pricing, such as EDI or reference margins, will it set that and then round up. With reference margins, it's percentage-based pricing because you're doing a fixed margin on it. And so with that, you can get some really weird wacko prices, like $13.71 or something. That's pretty awkward. People don't have a penny on them usually, and so a lot of people like to round up. Okay, so how do we do this? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through setting up a rounding scheme, how to apply it to that item, and then setting that setting that rounding scheme to a whole supplier's items, and then I'm going to go into Paladin just to make sure that everybody's with me, and we're just going to go over those three things again real quickly. Okay, so once Paladin Point of Sale is open, on the File menu, click Setup. The File menu is that one right at the very, very upper left-hand part of the screen, right above the Invoice and Quote Module button. You'll see that File. Setup is the only selection under that. That will bring you into the Paladin configuration window. There's an entire tab dedicated to rounding. I know there's a million tabs in there, so it might take a second to find it. But once you have located the rounding tab, that's the one that you want to go on. You'll see the rounding pane, and then the scheme name box, you can enter the name for the scheme. So it could be called, Pretty Nines, and this is one where all of them is going to be ending in 9, or more likely you'd probably call it, House Hassens, X Suppliers, rounding scheme, and then apply it that way. You will click Add. The name of the scheme is going to be added to the right over there. There's a little rounding list. I'll show you guys here in a few minutes. And list of the rounding schemes, you can highlight your new scheme name. And then the blank unnamed box on the right above, you can hit the Add button and then enter the first rounding point and click Add. That rounding point will appear in the rounding point list over there to the left. And again, I'll show you guys here in just a second. For each rounding point that you want to enter, repeat the previous step. So if you want to, let's say, so how this works is you want to set it for, let's say we want to do a 50 cents. So you do, 0.50, 0.99, 0.4. Let's do everything ending in 9. So 0.49, 0.99, 1.49, 1.99, 2.49, etc. Let's say we only want the rounding scheme to break in sets of 50 cents, ending in 9s, less than $5. Over $5, we'd like it to start kicking up by $1. So what Paladin does here is it's going to automatically calculate all of the remaining rounding scheme points. So you don't have to sit there and go up to, $2 million and infinitely create this huge rounding scheme list. What Paladin will do is when you stop entering rounding scheme points, it'll go, hey, what's the biggest difference between these 2 points? It'll find that $4.99 to $5.99 point, because we did 50-cent increments all the way up to there, $4.49, $4.99, and then we jumped up to $5.99. Well, we can stop right there because Paladin's going to recognize, oh, hey, $4.99 to $5.99 is a full dollar, and then it's going to continue that out on into infinite. So the next after $5.99 would of course be $6.99 and $7.99, $8.99. Now once I got to $10.99, if I made it, $14.99, then it would start going up in increments of $5, right? Because it's going to find the biggest point between my two largest rounding points and then take that on down the rest of the line. All right. So how to apply the rounding scheme to an item. Very simple. In the top ribbon, click on the inventory module. That's number 3 there. In the inventory tab in the part number box, enter the information to retrieve an item, the part number. Press enter. The third tab over, I believe, is the pricing tab. You can go into that pricing tab, and many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with this window right here that I've got a little picture of and my little arrow pointing to the rounding scheme that says default there. We start things off with a default rounding scheme that we think is like every 30 cents or something under $5, and then it jumps up in increments. Feel free to use that one. I think it's a pretty good one too. But then you click the little drop down, you'll see all of the rounding schemes that you've created. If you've created one other than default, that'll be there as well. You simply just add that one, select it, click save down at the bottom, and now you've applied that to an item. Okay, now how to do this for a whole supplier. Once Paladin is set up, or is open, excuse me, go into that file menu, upper left hand corner, click setup, and the Paladin configuration window, click the supplier tab. So not in the rounding tab this time. We're going to go to the suppliers tab. Then you just scroll down there. You're going to see a price rounding scheme pane. There's a little drop down just like there was in the pricing menu there, and you can just do the little drop down, select the one that you want, and then click set rounding. That will go ahead and apply that rounding scheme to every item that has that supplier as its primary supplier. Okay, so let's hop over to Paladin and make sure I didn't lose anybody. All right. So first thing, how to set up the rounding. I'm going to go File right here, Setup. You will see we've got a rounding tab right here. Now we go into this here, let's take a look at default. So default, you can see we're going up in 10-cent increments, then it jumps up 30 cents here. And we've got a lot of pretty one. And then once we get down way down here, you know, we're going up by 10 bucks. But let's go ahead and make a new one here. All right, so let's add one. Let's call it Chad's Rounding. Add this bad boy. Okay, so let's go ahead and do my 50-cent plan here. So we're going to do 40 cents. Now I could click add each time. What I'm doing is hitting enter on my keyboard. Let's do 0.99. Enter once gets me to add. Enter again adds it. 149. There we go. 199. 249. 299. You can see how this would get rather monotonous if we were going to in fact go all the way up to, you know, $10, $20. You'd be sitting here for quite some time, but we're not going to do that. We're just going to go up to $4.99 and then $5.99. Now I could add $6.99, but I don't need to. If I'm happy with that dollar break being continued on into the future for that rounding scheme, then I can just leave it right here. Paladin has now recognized, hey, the biggest difference between these numbers is $4.99 to $5.99. So if we get a price that comes down that gets calculated at, you know, $6.30, that'll go ahead and round up to $6.99, not $6.49, because Paladin recognizes that dollar is the biggest difference and will continue to carry that on into infinity in the future here. Okay, so let's go ahead and save this here. We now have Chad's rounding scheme created. Let's learn how to apply that to an item real quick here. Let's bring up my test item. Let's bring up an item that actually has a price. Probably would be a little bit more realistic. Here we go. And rounding, I can go right here, select Chad's rounding, and now that rounding scheme will be applied to this item. Now, will it just automatically change this price? Let's go ahead and see. We're going to save it, and we're going to bring it right back. We're going to refresh that item here. Nope, kept my 539. So see, as I said, manually priced items, it's not going to change it automatically like that. It's only going to change this when an automatic price update is occurring on this item, aka my reference margin is either coming into play here because I've got that set for 46%, something like that. Then when this sets its price, it'll kick in the rounding scheme. Or if this is an item that I order and is updated via EDI, then I will go ahead, receive that new price in there, and then this Chad's rounding scheme will round it up to the to respect the price points that I've put on there. Okay, and then lastly here, let's go ahead and wrap up by learning how to apply this to the entire supplier here. So let's just go into a supplier. Let's go file setup here. Now we want to go into the supplier tab. That's this guy right here. It says supplier on there, nestled right between sales list and taxes. And then if we scroll down a little bit, you can see price rounding scheme. This is the price rounding scheme pane right here. And then we can go ahead. It's selected none right now, but then we've got all the options in there. Default and Chad's rounding. And then set to rounding. Boom. That little button right there, one little click, just added that rounding scheme to every one of my suppliers' items. At least all of the items that have that supplier set as the primary supplier. It's not going to do this for just anyone who has this as a supplier, only ones that has this as the first primary supplier. Click that button, and now we've just done it, as opposed to having to go into, 200 different items and manually do that. It's just a little bit more efficient, a little bit quicker this way. All right, and that is all for today. Do I have any questions? There's a little question pane. If you have any questions, now would be the time to go ahead and answer those here, or ask those, excuse me. Well, hey, if something comes into your mind a few minutes after we hang up the phone, as always tends to happen, you can feel free to give me a call. Just ask for Chad Klein, or you can ask for someone in support. They should be fairly knowledgeable on this stuff. There's some really good articles as well to complete the knowledge of the rounding scheme. If you have any further questions, you can check the About Reference Margins article in the knowledge base. You can also check the About Rounding Schemes. There's a few different articles on how to accomplish various things. Always a good resource. Well, guys, I appreciate you taking the time to sit down with me and learn a little bit and kind of take our knowledge of and use of Paladin to the next level. All about automation here. So the more that we can automate things like adjusting our prices and making them pretty and consistent, the more time we can have to go out and build relationships with our customers and hopefully build the business that way. As always, it's been a
Hey,
pleasure.
Chad.
Hey,
Hey, Chad. There is one question. This is Charles. There's one question up on the board if you want to take another look. It just came in.
So the new price will change if you have never touched the price. No, it will only change when an automatic price update scheme is applied to the item. So really the reference margin or the EDI. If you just add an item, when you add an item, it will set the price for you, or you need to set the price. If you're doing that, then it will respect that manually set price. Any more questions? All right, very good, everyone. Well, the last, excuse me, a little plug for our next webinar here is we're going to have our friends from BuilderWire going to be talking about integrated e-commerce with Paladin point of sale, how to streamline operations between a online platform and Paladin point of sale. We've got some fun integration there and some cool capabilities. So tune in Tuesday, April 3rd at 9 o'clock in the morning for that. And you keep an eye on your features, fixes, browser update. In the back of Paladin window, you'll see a little advertisement come through for it. You guys can go ahead and register, and probably all know the way to do that. So keep an eye on that, and feel free to join us. All right, guys, have a great week. Thanks so much.